Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. In this video, we're talking about all things ships and more specifically what is going to be releasing within the next year or so. This includes massive and widely anticipated ships like the Drake Kraken, the Gatac Railin, and some soon to be releasing ships like the Apollo and the Perseus. Now, keep in mind, even though we do have official info on all these ships we're talking about today, nothing is quite set in stone until these ships inevitably release. That being said, if you are looking forward to some of these ships, feel free to watch till the end. This won't be a major deep dive into these ships individually, but if you would like to see any deep dives on these ships, please let me know down below. Lastly, if you are enjoying the content, feel free to subscribe. I have channel memberships open if you wanted to go the extra mile, and feel free to join the community Discord. I will have a link for that down below. With that out of the way, though, let's get into all the awesome ships that you can look forward to seeing within the next year or two. Now, I really don't want to keep you waiting, so let's get into one of the big fellas first, and that would be the Drake Kraken, which has entered pre production and will enter full development later this year. This ship, in my opinion, is a fever dream. Something that genuinely feels like it was never going to make it to the game, seemingly is finally entering production this year. The ship by itself is such an incredibly desired ship for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it acts as basically the spaceship version of an aircraft carrier and simultaneously has a really cool gameplay idea behind it, but also visually makes it one of the most badass ships CIG has ever concepted. Now, if you're curious about the ship, I do have a video dedicated to this one and the Anvil Liberator. These are what I deem to be the aircraft carriers of Star Citizen. I will have a link for that down below if you wanted to check that out. But before we get too excited about these ships do take a while to make, and I suspect that we won't be seeing the Kraken until late 2026 or early 2027. The sooner the better, of course, but just keep in mind that these do take an incredibly long amount of time, especially a ship of this size. So, whether it's in our hands next year or the year after, not too sure, but you should at least be expecting it to be in development, and hopefully, we see updates on it here and there. Now, moving on from the Drake Kraken, I know it's hard to top, but we have another ship that was also seemingly forgotten that is finally being talked about, that being the Gatac Railin. Now, again, similarly to the Kraken, the Railin is entering pre production right now, so we most likely won't be having it in our hands for quite some time, though this doesn't take away from the fact that one of the bigger alien ships is finally starting to enter the pipeline. Now, it isn't a merchantman, but hey, at least we are clearing up the pipeline a little bit. The ship seems to just be an upscaled Gatac Railin and will act as a freighter. Now, who knows how functional this thing will really be, but undeniably, I do think it looks pretty sick across the board. There really isn't a ton more to say about the ship other than that it looks like a nice addition to the verse whenever it inevitably releases. But keep in mind, just like the Kraken, we're looking at more of a 2026 to 2027 release date. Now, moving on to something that is very much closer than the previous two, we have the Anvil Paladin. This ship was originally rumored to be coming out at Invictus this year. Unfortunately, that did not happen, but it is seemingly finally getting closer to its release. As we know from the latest monthly report, this ship is very close to leaving Greybox and should at some point in the month of July. This ship was revealed last year at IAE and, in my opinion, looks pretty solid. It acts mainly as a gunship, and whilst that type of role is still somewhat undefined in current Star Citizen, I think the ship will do really well within that sector later down the line. I personally suspect that this ship will be in our hands around CitizenCon, but I think regardless, we should see it before the end of 2025. Now, moving on to one of the most hyped up ships of this year and recent years, we have the Drake Ironclad. Now, based off the last monthly report, it still doesn't seem the ship is quite there yet. It's disappointing to say, but I am starting to become unsure of a 2025 release date for this ship. As the report stated, the Ironclad is seemingly getting some slight alterations to improve traversal, but this really doesn't give us a great idea as to when we could see this or really how far along the ship is across the board. I'm still absolutely hoping to see this ship in 2025, but we'll really just have to see. Based off of what they've said in almost all monthly reports regarding the Ironclad, it really has been very vague, and it does seem that they took some people off this ship to work on some of the Invictus ships and get those ready for release. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Ironclad was a bit behind schedule. Now, if you do want to learn a little bit more about the Ironclad, I do actually have a dedicated video for that ship, and I will also leave that in the description down below. But if you don't already know, the Ironclad is a basically just a very large armored freighter. Of course, it's not like Kraken sized or anything, but it can hold a good amount of cargo. And if you do go for the Ironclad Assault, which is the more combat oriented variant, you're going to get a lot of cool features like a repair bay and the ability to hold a ton of ground vehicles. Personally, I love the design of the ship by itself, and the role sounds really cool. I think the Ironclad Assault is like the perfect base raider, and I know I'm kind of going on about the ship right now, but I think a lot of you guys can agree this is a really cool one, and I'm certainly super excited to see it in the verse. I just hope that, it can maybe fit into the 2025 release window, if not, most likely early 2026. Now, moving on to a ship that is finally going to be releasing very soon, and that is the new Apollos. These are medical ships that have been concept for quite some time now and are finally releasing this year, and I'm pretty confident that we'll see them in the next few months. Now, some of the most exciting features of the ships involve the ability for you to adjust the tier level of the medical beds in your Apollo and the number of beds that are in there, as well as the drones that will go out and pick up down players and bring them back to the ship. Now, if we pause for a moment and just get really honest here, I don't think we're going to see the drones actually working when this ship first releases. Now, I don't necessarily think they're going to scrap the whole idea, but I really don't see CIG actually releasing drones with the Apollo. Drones are a very big aspect of this game. They are going to basically do a lot of work in terms of base building. I'm sure they're probably going to implement them in some way for repairing your ship, at least later down the line. But I just don't see CIG actually releasing any sort of first implementation of drones with the Apollo. The Apollo has like such a dynamic situation when it comes to these drones having to go pick up players and bring them back. I can't imagine how many variables are actually involved with that. And I just really don't see CIG doing that, especially in a year that they aren't doing many features. Though I would love to keep up the hope. I'm just being as honest as possible here. So this ship really is awesome though by itself. I mean, it is just a medical ship, and even though medical gameplay is not very extensive just yet, I do think having this ship in the verse will be really nice. As you can see on screen, I think it is a pretty nice looking ship. It's definitely more on the unique side of things, but again, I think it kind of stands out in its own way, and I do love the red paints for it because it just kind of screams medical ship. So I am looking forward to this thing, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it down below, and maybe when you think we're going to see it. I'm personally thinking around 4.4 or whatever that patch will be. I'm starting to think that that's probably a decent release window for this thing. Now, moving on, we do have a ship that should release shortly after the RSI Apollo, that being the RSI Perseus. Now, the Perseus is one of the most aggressive front ends and just generally aggressive looks for any military style ship that we've seen in the game. And I personally am just absolutely in love with it. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, but I do think that this thing looks absolutely amazing. Now, this thing obviously has some pretty massive guns. They are size 7 on the top and the bottom of the ship, and there has actually been a rumor that those got upgunned to size 8, so they might do even more damage than what we previously thought. Regardless, I am super excited for this thing. It acts as a heavy gunship. It's not quite a capital class ship, but it's still a very large ship, and I personally think it's going to deal a ton of damage, especially in like the fleet battle scenarios. So I'm really looking forward to this thing. Apparently, it should be leaving Gray Box very, very soon, which is really good news, meaning we should have this thing around CitizenCon, maybe IAE. I wouldn't be surprised if it did release to CitizenCon, though. I think by itself, this is one of the more hyped up ships of this year. And again, I would love to hear your thoughts on this thing. I know we've had a lot of hype around it and we've been teased a bunch about it and they've talked about it a ton, but we're finally getting around to maybe seeing this thing release in the next few months. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Now, moving on, we have a ship that will release very soon, quite literally within the next couple weeks or maybe month, and that is the RSI Meteor. Now, the RSI Meteor is basically a Mantis variant as far as we're concerned. Apparently, it has a very strong loadout based off the sneak peeks and everything that they've talked about so far. And if you didn't already know, there's going to be a behind the ships probably as this video releases. So when you're done with this, feel free to go check that out. It should be really cool. This thing, I'm not a big fan of the Mantis, style ship, the way it looks, but I do know a lot of people are. So if you are interested at all in the Mantis, you should be really, really excited for this ship releasing in probably the next couple weeks. So that really is going to wrap it up for all the ships we talk about here. There's obviously a ton of other ships that they've talked about that are unannounced or that they've just given very small details about that are variants or something like that. We obviously aren't going to get into that because then we're just getting into the super speculation zone, and I don't want to get that deep into it. I'm super excited for a lot of these ships, and I would love to hear your thoughts on all the ones we talked about today. I'm personally rooting for the Drake Kraken, the Ironclad, and the Perseus. Those are my three from this list that I am easily the most excited for. But again, I would love to hear your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching to the end of the video. I appreciate you so much. I cannot wait to get some more content, especially about 4.3 when that starts to get into the P2 and whatnot. But I do think we have some pretty exciting months ahead of us for Star Citizen, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you are as well. Again, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.